Good evening, dear partners, colleagues, and guests of today's meeting. Today is the 25th of December. We're going to have quite an interesting broadcast dedicated to the topic that I announced previously, which is the Q&A dedicated to the published memorandum on the future development of the GTI group of companies. Dear friends, I would ask you to give me some feedback, whether you can hear and see me. Give me a score from 1 to 10, please, on the scale from 1 to 10. So we have good connectivity, then we can start. Today I would like to see what countries, sorry, and regions you are from. Let's see the geography. We haven't done our geographic roll call in a while. Let's see the geography for today. I see the United States, Great Britain, England. We'll have both England and Great Britain. So I see Estonia, Bashkiria, the United States again, Moldova, India, Bulgaria, the Czech Republic, Estonia, Slovenia, Lithuania, Ghana, the United States again, England, Russia, Belarus, Lithuania, India, Nikolaevsk, Siberia, Russia, Moldova, Köln, which is Germany, Cool, which is Cologne. We have Slovakia. We have different regions of India, Maharashtra. I know that we have quite a lot of partners from India. Okay, friends, in this case, we can start. Just give me 1 second. I think we can start. Okay, friends. I saw Finland, Azerbaijan, South Africa, and the Republic of Bashkortostan. Okay, dear colleagues, on the last meeting that we had literally a couple of days ago on Saturday, we agreed that before today's meeting, you will watch the two videos that I recommended, and you also will read the memorandum that the GTI group of companies published regarding the development for the next 10 years. So what I would like to hear from you now, did any of you manage to watch those films and read the memorandum? Give me a plus in the chat if you did so. Okay, cool. I see quite a lot of pluses. That we have a lot of partners who did that. Now I have a question to you. How do you think those two videos connect, or what is the relation, or how does it help understand the memorandum that we saw and read? So in your opinion, just give me a brief opinion of yours. How related they are, the videos, the two videos that I talked about, and the memorandum. Dear colleagues, if you're using a language other than Russian, could you please use Google Translate to translate your question from your language into Russian, and then please copy paste the translation into the chat. It's going to be easier and faster for all of us. Alexander says, we have clear plans for the future. Gulnara says, strategy and development. Maya put it quite right. the reports made by specialists confirm what was written or is written in the memorandum and what is planned to be done. I would like to add here, Maya, you hit the nail on the head, but I would like to add here the video from Dr. Nitsky about the technology itself and what it represents in terms of being a ready, effective transportation, what has been done so far, and the entire concept enshrined in the Dr. Nitsky's message. All of it means that it's a product that is going to be in much demand in the 21st century. In other words, this sector requires changes, and Dr. Nitsky is the creator of those changes, and we're helping Dr. Nitsky with that. So those two videos indeed 100% reflect to the strategy that we saw in the memorandum, and it helps to corroborate the facts laid out therein. So let's go through the questions that you had based on that memorandum. But before I start, here's one more thing that I wanted to add. The questionnaire that you were supposed to use to ask your questions is still open, is still not closed, and you can use it to ask your questions until the end of the year. So you will still have at least 1 week to ask your questions, but today I'm going to cover the most important items from the memorandum, 3 points mainly, and you guys asked most of your questions about those 3 points from that memorandum, and they are of concern to any investor in the train transportation technology. So we will discuss those 3 main points, and the remaining questions will be answered and discussed, I guess, early next year. There will be a couple of questions dedicated to the Q&A. So I see Max is asking that I have not heard or seen anything in Zaretsky's video. Plans for the future are the same as they were in the last year. I haven't heard anything about the technology either new. It's kind of a new product that enjoys some attention. Okay, Max, you're entitled to your own opinion, but probably you skipped the first 3 minutes of that video. There was a project, a commercial project they talked about in Belarus, and that project was ordered by the presidential office in the resort area Sosny, and that project is now at the construction stage. So if it is now no news to you, then probably either you haven't watched attentively, or probably your standards for news are quite high if it's not news to you. And then when you're saying you didn't hear anything new from the plans for the future, well, plans for the future by default imply scaling up and also an optimistic or best case scenario for the future, for the next year and the year after. And so yes, sometimes plans, they are not really new, but they're based on already what we know. But if you're saying that the product enjoys some attention or little attention, well, we have the Prime Minister from India showing, or Prime Minister of India and Prime Minister of India showing interest. Then BRICS countries showed interest in the technology. Do you call this little attention? Then string transportation was brought to included in the agenda of the Forum of the Union State, where the string transportation technology was recognized as a viable technology, and now national standards are being developed for this technology to be applied and scaled up. If you call that little attention or some attention, then probably your expectations are too high for the project that we are investing in. So yeah, I just kind of commented on the message sent by one of our guests, so I had to comment on his comment. But things that I said, dear colleagues, I think they are quite considerable achievements, milestones that were achieved in the expiring year 2025. So if you guys agree with me, I would like to ask you to put a plus in the chat. We have almost 180 people here right now. So you see dozens of pluses. Probably will have even hundreds of pluses if we give it some time of people who agree with me. Well, Alexander says, if you call this little attention or some attention, then imagine what's going to happen in a couple of months and years when we will see a major breakthrough. Will you call that still some attention? Well, dear colleagues, thank you for your supports and for your feedback. Okay, friends, I see that most of our audience are quite sensible and reasonable and have a good take on what's happening in the development of the string transportation technology. So we can start, I guess. And let me repeat once again, since questions are still incoming, I think it would be fair to collect as many questions from our entire audience as possible, from all the platform partners and investors into the technology. And then we can deal with narrow questions or narrow field questions because there are a lot of items to discuss in the memorandum. So when we get as much information, as much feedback as possible, it will make our future meetings more productive. So we will keep collecting your feedback, your questions. But for now, I would like to highlight three main questions, three main bullet points that are of concern for our audience. So we can gradually come to that point. I'm going to open the memorandum itself, and together we can go through it, through those points. Dear colleagues, right now, let's outline the rules of our today's meeting. I will first point out those three items. We will touch upon the connection between the videos and the memorandum, and at the end, we will allocate around 10 minutes for the questions on the topics in discussion. So Maxilian, Greb, ask the questions. For now, I'm going to skip it, but we'll go back to it at the end. I will ask you to repeat your question at the end because we would like to stick to the schedule, to the order, and not to get distracted. Well, me in particular. So I will start sharing my screen with you, and please write me in the chat, to me in the chat, whether you can see my screen right now, whether it's visible to you. Go. Alexander says 10. Yes, plus is okay. It means you can see my screen. Good. Now, friends, we have 12 items in the contents of that memorandum. However, I would like to dwell on 5, 6, and 7, the main questions that require clarification from our investors. We are fully aware how the string transportation technology was funded through crowd investing. It happened through 15 stages as a original course vector explaining how the technology is going to be funded and scaled up. So this is the main vector or course that the company followed throughout all these years. So friends, I somehow jumped to a different page. So it's not like Why does it jump all the time? Quite a lot of questions from our partners concerned, well, were about whether stage 15 is going to be implemented and why it is not currently implemented. For some reason, I click on the page and then I got redirected. Just a minute, friends. Okay. Point 5, point 6. So point 5, 15 stages of development. Point 6, share conversion plans. And 7, remuneration payment plans. We're going to look into those 3 items. So let's jump to point number 5. 15 stages of development. Here, so here's the thing, dear colleagues, tell me how it's better for you. Do you want me to tell you this in my own words, or shall we read out? Alexander is saying we're more interested in point number 10. Okay, I will comment that too. So your own words you're saying. Okay, so yes, indeed. So we don't have to like read it out. Many of you read it already. Okay, so in a nutshell, dear friends, just give me a moment, please. We need to state the obvious, right? When the process of funding of the string transportation technology was launched, the original 15 stages were developed in 2013, they were published in 2014, and it was the course for the development considering the back then political and economical realities context. And back then, the original 15 stages were quite optimistical because its implementation, the implementation of those 15 stages, implied that we would provide investing throughout all 15 stages, and it also meant that several factors would have to be implemented, like for example, the funding, the creation of the engineering school, the creation of the production facilities, the availability of machinery, the availability of land for the testing grounds. I'm talking about all those factors and a number of other factors that were outlined in that document. I'm talking about the 15-stage document. So if all of those factors were implemented or were kind of put together to create a full puzzle, a full picture, and then another thing that we shouldn't forget is the geopolitical factor. Alexander says it's not only about in full volume, but also in a short period of time. Yes, in other words, hundreds of millions of dollars were supposed to be invested in a short period of time to implement all of the stages. But also we remember that the entire process that started in 2014 was also undermined by the fact that the local government in the Baltic states did not allocate land for the construction, and that's where the first R&D institute and the testing grounds were supposed to be built. And because of the bad publicity and probably bad competition from the local players in the market, that year was not in that year, the plans that were supposed to be implemented weren't implemented. However, Dr. Nitsky already achieved quite a lot, because that's the year when he started created the first design bureau. Then, back then, if I'm not mistaken, in one of the institutes, educational institutions, premises were allocated for the company's headquarters, for the design bureaus. In other words, yes, the process was launched. However, then some administrative and legal barriers were erected. And because of that, Dr. Nitsky had to relocate to Belarus, and in 2015 started his operations in Belarus. First, it was the testing grounds allocated in Marina Gorka, and then he had to start from scratch in Belarus. So basically, we were already behind, because of all those problems, behind the schedule. And if you remember, it was supposed to have, if not capitalization, then in a couple of years to move from a venture project to an investment project. And it didn't happen because of all those problems. So, but let's not dig too deep into the history, but just say that throughout all those stages, problems or factors appeared that did not allow to fund the technology in full, that did not allow to implement the outlined types of transportation. Specifically, within the 15 stages, it was planned to implement high-speed transportation system. We do remember, and memorandum also mentions it, that because of the lack of land, it wasn't implemented. This is A. B, because of the lack of proper funding, it was decided to remove the high-speed transportation from the initial project and single it out for targeted investment from qualified investors, institutional investors, and fund the high-speed transportation not through crowd investing, but through separate investment vehicles, because it would take too long to fund this technology through crowd investing. Because the model is good, the crowd investing model is very good, and it's very effective, but it does not provide the funding in the necessary volume. So it wouldn't allow Dr. Nitsky to implement high-speed transportation in the required time, and that's why last year high-speed transportation was singled out into a separate project, and we know about it. It was written about it last year on the website. Here you have it. It's the memorandum on high-speed transportation, and that memorandum, the memorandum that was published last week, also made. So it's here in order to minimize and optimize the costs for this particular project. The holding considers the opportunity of separating high-speed transportation into an independent investment project with the attraction of qualified investors. At the same time, GTI preserves shares, participation shares, that would reflect the contribution made during the previous development stages. Therefore, the previously developed strategy stages requires actualization with account for modern terms and conditions and priorities of the holding. At the same time, the basic principles will be preserved, like stage by stage, engineering self-sufficiency, and orientation on practical results. And the updated GTI strategy considers that the document is viewed as a completed phase of development on the basis of which a new stage begins, which is business scaling, international integration, and capitalization of USD technology. So what does it mean? It means that the technology is viable, and now it has two commercial products ready for rolling out in the market. And this is what they mean by saying as a completed phase of development, on the basis of which a new stage begins. In other words, currently, the GTI group of is now focused on scaling up already ready active business, which is urban passenger and cargo or freight transportation products, which is quite lucrative for us as investors. Because for us, capitalization of those two commercial products will allow us to receive our returns faster. So we don't have to wait until the high-speed transportation is implemented, which is a huge benefit for us. This is why I said that we need to look into those two videos that I talked about, where the heads of different departments across the world were talking about what kind of projects are in the pipeline. So this just proves companies currently moving into in that particular follows that particular course, and we can see that. So the company is not just making plans only. It actually, in the strategy, it also lays out the facts, what has been achieved so far and what is going to be achieved in the near future. So it's not just like make believe, but it's actual listing of all the achievements, of all the milestones, and also, of course, plans for the future. In other words, we can see that Dr. Nitsky and his team are putting in their best efforts to make sure that those plans and the original plans are fully implemented. So if we go back to the original 15 stages, we can see that those stages were implemented in the meaning that the technology has been implemented and is considered as the completed phase of development. And moreover, Dr. Nunitsky and his team delivered even more than originally conceived in the 15 stages, because now we have around 16 different types of rolling stock, and we will have dozens of different types of infrastructural tracks. We'll have different modules and units that were not originally included in the 15 stages. And Dr. Unitsky also, I mentioned it on numerous occasions, is a very good crisis manager, because throughout the 10 years of Unitsky's Technologies Inc. Been in the market, and also throughout the years of Dr. Unitsky's personal career and work before the creation of the holding, was also always had to work in the crisis times that did not actually allow to scale up, yet he managed to scale up thanks to his unique skills. Somehow he manages with smaller amounts of money to deliver more than originally promised. I underlined it several occasions, and I would like to do that again today. So we can say that the author of the technology delivered more than he originally promised, for with less money. So right now we are moving to a stage where the technology needs to be scaled up. And here, friends, here's what we see, which is very important for us. Let us gradually move on to the next point. which is the pre-IPO share conversion plans and remuneration payment plans. So we've discussed the stages of development, and they are closely related, and the decision made. We see that 15 stages are not relevant anymore because the high-speed transportation is now a different project. And it also is closely related to the share conversion plans and remuneration payment plans, because we're all, after all, expecting to receive payouts in the next year or two. So, and let's see how it is all connected. But before we discuss that, let me take a look at the chat regarding the first item, which is the 15 stages of development. Let's see what kind of comments we have here. So Sergey says we'll have to wait 20 years in total to receive good dividends, which it doesn't seem too long considering the scale of the project. I agree. Considering the scale, 10, 20 years doesn't seem too much. But you're saying good dividends. Well, as for good dividends, good dividends, we will look into it probably next at the next meeting, because we have a breakdown of when good dividends might be coming. But I think sizable dividends probably will be coming in the next 5 to 10 years, starting from 2025. I think the year 2030, 2035, the dividends will be very hefty, very sizable. I mean, of course, nothing nothing like the dividends in the first couple of years. It's not me being optimistic. I just understand how that scaling up snowball effect will kick in, how projects will start popping up like mushrooms after the rain. Remember, I gave you my personal analysis as a person who is observing the project development on the side, and how Belarusian government, for example, is regarding that technology. For example, they recently ordered a commercial project in Belarus in the resort area. And I can see that it will help, it will facilitate the rollout of the technology in other countries, because we need to make sure first that the home country and technology supports it. And it is important to see that the technology is not only used by the designer of that technology, but that there are other customers who also are in need of that technology and order that technology, and not just the testing grounds in Marina Gorka or in Aquarel Park. So it's not like, repeat, this is my personal analysis and my personal prediction. What we have right now is that the customer, represented by the state itself, wants this technology to be implemented. They want to see it built, commissioned, and operated. And I'm sure after this first pilot project is implemented, independent project, we will see bigger projects being rolled out, projects that will probably connect cities and even countries. And that's where the support and the recognition of the technology will start increasing. And then, of course, the recognition of the technology in the countries. And I'm talking about hundreds of billions and even trillions of dollars of revenues. So when the first project is implemented, construction, commissioning, and operation of that project, then the third project will not be long in waiting. And that's where the snowball effect will start, or that's when other projects will start popping up as mushrooms after the rain. So, and that's where, when, dear colleagues, it is my conviction, we will see rapid growth. And we're not talking about 5 or 10 years here. We're talking about 1 or 2 years where the capitalization can skyrocket. Just take Revolut company, for example, the company that provides fintech services, the company that works in the financial sector. The company had a capitalization of $1 billion, and now they have like $70 billion. So it's a very considerable jump, right? So in our sector, such a jump is also possible. And here we can see a, how to better put it, like a chain lightning effect, or when you can see like a chain reaction. Yes, that's the word for it. Chain reaction. We will see projects popping up in one country, second country, third country, and scaling up. And it's not going to take 20 years, surely. It's going to happen way sooner. Yes, another important point here, in addition to the project in the Sosna Resort area, we recently saw news of the design of a rolling stock in India. And India, dear colleagues, is the biggest country in terms of population and one of the leaders in terms of the GDP growth. And India alone will be sufficient to get a capitalization of a dozen, $100 billion. So it do- we just have to observe, and we will see a boom in one of the countries for sure. And that boom, that skyrocketing, will definitely happen, and all the facts points to that. Okay, friends. So I read your comments. Thank you for your comments and for your feedback. So share conversion plans. It's point, and we had a similar. It's point 6. We know that a total of 400 billion pre-IPO shares have been issued, give or take, because this is the number of pre-IPO shares based on the assessment of the intellectual property of Dr. Nitsky that he transferred from Unisky. So out of 400 billion shares, currently 121 billion investment pre-IPO shares were converted. For crowd investing, 200 billion were allocated. So half of it were given away by Dr. Nitsky to 4 holdings companies. In other words, there are still approximately 78 billion pre-IPO shares that are planned for allocation or conversion. This way, the company right now has still the opportunity to sell shares through crowd investing. The question here, why the GTI company will keep selling those shares and how it is connected to our potential profits. So I did mention it during my previous meetings, but I would like to focus out again on this, and let me read out some of the paragraphs. The funds raised will be, I will highlight it for you. The funds raised, just give me a second. I can't highlight. I can't highlight it. Well, I read it out. The funds raised will be used to implement targeted projects and support the operations of the engineering company UST, which will enable the GTI group of companies to maintain its growth, expand its portfolio, and strengthen its position in international markets. The main goal is to achieve sustainable profitability and establish a long-term mechanism for paying returns to investors. In response to numerous requests from project participants, the GTI management decided to consider the possibility of allocating profits to investor payments even before reaching the planned level of profitability, provided that the pace of development is maintained and contractual obligations are fulfilled. This approach is a manifestation of partnership responsibility and gratitude to those who supported the project in its early stages. GTI Strategy assumes that the interests of investors fully coincide with the global goals of the project, bringing UST technology to the international market, scaling up the solutions being implemented, and increasing the holding's capitalization. So here, dear friends, it is important to understand that the GTI company is ready to share its net profits with us even before the company launches its IPO. The company is ready to do that without investing. Well, without even reaching the expected break-even point. So let me explain it in simple terms. So we have Unitsky String Technologies Inc., the heart of our project, and GTI owns that company. So GTI owns the technology and is a founder of Unitsky String Technologies Incorporated. So Unitsky String Technologies Inc., you read the memorandum, and you know that UST Inc. plus marketing offices and production facilities, 8 companies in total, they are all require monthly costs for their operations. And we're talking about at least $2.5 million per month, which is quite a lot of money for the company to continue its operations. I'm talking about salaries here. I'm talking about rental, lease of lands, and offices. I'm talking about costs for the maintenance and repairs, taxes, utilities, well, and all other costs and expenses. There are dozens of those cost items there. And now here's what we have. The entire GTI holding, which includes different legal entities right now, is making sure that the string transportation goes into the market. And the company receives orders. And the company makes money, first of all, from design activities, from engineering business. And that business involves feasibility studies, for example, for a specific commercial project. That engineering operations include pre-design work, design work, startup and commissioning, general contractors supervision, and all of it means revenues for the company. That's where the company gets in revenues at the early stage. So let's imagine the company receives money from within first project, second project, third project, and so on. So the company has to make sure its staff receives its salaries, their salary, and all the costs are covered. And I told you the total amount of costs. If the company spends money on its operations, my question to you, can we expect some kind of super profits in the next 2, 3, 4 years if the company has to spend at least $30 million to sustain itself? So 2.5 million per month means more than $30 million per year. So if the company spends that money on its operations, can we expect big payouts? So the company could spend those 30 millions, take those 30 millions from its revenues, the revenues they receive from different projects. Because the company, for example, receives an order for the project and develops a design for that project. But it doesn't mean that project will be brought to the end. For example, in Nepal, there was a project in the pipeline, a lot of support, but then the geopolitical crisis happened and the project was suspended. Okay, there will be a second, third project from in a different country that would also yield money for the company, but it doesn't guarantee continuous or stable cash flow for the company. Down payment for the design, yes, but it's not a given fact that a project is going to be completed. But now imagine the company that revenue takes that revenue and instead of reinvesting that money into its own business, into its own development, would start sharing that revenue with its investors through GTI, because GTI is the parent company, the founding company. So instead of taking that money and covering its own operations and its R&D and production, do you think it's possible for the company to do that and continue its operations? So what would be the scenario for the company to be able to use the revenues to fund its operations and at the same time be able to share its profits with its investors? So what would be the condition, what would be the scenario for this model to work, in your opinion? I hope you follow my thought. So Alexander said that we need to continue, make sure that the funding or fundraising is continued. Well, yes, thank you for that answer. Yes, and funding is ensured by selling those extra 78 billion investment shares, pre-IPO shares. So this is how the company can generate revenues without tapping into its own pockets to fund the operations, its own operations. So in other words, the company can use those 78 billion pre-IPO shares to sell them in order to be able to cover the $2.5 million of costs per month. So this is how the self-funding is ensured. This is how all the processes are being covered. So the company is able to sell those shares to fund its operations and then can take their revenues coming from different orders to generate profits, and those profits can be shared with the shareholders through the parent company GTI. So this mechanism, this formula, allows us to expect payouts in the next years. And we all hope that remuneration will be paid in the year 2026 if the financial performance of the company for the year 2026 is positive, if the company generates net profit at the end of 2025. And this is also mentioned in the memorandum, by the way, where it also says there that this algorithm is possible thanks to this formula, thanks to this mechanism. And it is for this reason, dear colleagues and partners, that I've been always saying that crowd investing process is a business that you can do for dozens of years into the future. I'm not saying that it will take us dozens and dozens of years to raise funds for the string transportation technology through the holding company GTI. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we have already a successful case where crowd investing was able to prove its efficiency, not only in just setting up a business, but in creating a large scale, one of the kind technology in the world. And it's one of a kind case where crowd investing is used to create an entire sector, industrial sector. And it is a success case because we have already two ready commercial products. You know what products I'm talking about: urban passenger and freight transportation products or solutions. So as for the crowd investing currently, we've already obtained the result in the form of a ready technology that is ready to be scaled up. However, in my opinion, throughout the 11 years of the existence of crowd investing, it is now, dear partners and investors, and I'm addressing each and every one of you, it is now the most responsible point in time, period. Because we have a ready product, ready to be rolled out, scaled up. But in order to be able to implement that product and launch it into the market at large scale, it takes time. And during that time, those operating costs need to be covered. I'm talking about the operation costs of the entire GTI structure. And it is thanks to crowd investing that we will be and are able to cover those costs, provided that we are active agents. And meanwhile, the engineering company will be doing their best to further develop the technology and not just stagnate at the current level, but improve the technology. And crowd investing is kind of a driving mechanism, and it's a main guarantee that this is what is going to happen, that engineering company will be able to move forward. Because even in the worst case scenario, let's say the company is underfunded on a certain months in terms of covering its costs. So what's going to happen? Well, you realize what can happen. You might lose part of your assets as GTI. Like a, a company might be dissolved because their staff will not receive a salary. Or, in other words, we need to maintain what we've already created. And what has been created can be scaled up in the next year or two and increase tenfold or more. So this is why, in my opinion, crowd investing is a guarantee, or is better, the mechanism that can help us ensure that string transportation moves forward. Because right now, string transportation or Unitsky String Technologies Inc. does not yet receive enough orders to cover all of its costs. And in the worst case scenario, let's say crowd investing is shut down or is folded, then we would find ourselves not in a very good situation. And that's why we decided to do the rebranding of RSW Systems. And that's why we're offering very lucrative marketing conditions to attract new investors into the technology. And new investors, in my opinion, well, not even opinion. If you can even see it yourselves, new investors now face the lowest risks when investing into the technology. In January 2026, we are going to launch our upgraded platform, and the new investors that will be coming to that platform, they will indeed have the lowest risks because they will be investing in a technology that has already two commercial products that have a very good market development potential, and they kind of know when capitalization can happen. Quite clear deadlines. And we, when we invested 10 years ago, had way bigger risks. And now you, as agents, have quite a lot of information to share and quite a lot of arguments to present to convince them that this is a viable technology, this is a lucrative, profitable technology to invest in because of all the small risks and all the achievements made in the last 10 years. I hope you understand my message here. And now, when the crowd investing will continue its work, and thanks to the Micron Global Marketing Company, we will do that. All of you who are going to be active agents will be able to realize their own potential in that area as well, because this is your opportunity to earn very decent money for your agency, for your work. It allows you to build your own career and be very confident about your tomorrow, because this product is going to be very much in demand, and the crowd investing on our platform is going to be scaled up too, because we're not going only to focus on string transportation technology as one of the products created by Dr. Initsky. We will have other projects and products developed by Dr. Initsky that we're going to host on our platform, launch on our platform. And those products and investment proposals will be, of course, related to Dr. Unitsky's technologies and inventions. But I will tell you more about our plans during our future meetings. I'm giving you a small spoiler. I will share my plans, our plans for 2026. I will make a special announcement about it. But however, most important thing to understand right now is being active in crowd investing will guarantee to all of us that the string transportation technology right now, when it needs it most, will receive the necessary funding to maintain its positions in the market, to keep operating and eventually scale up. Vladislavska says, we're ready to take action. We're waiting for the launch of the platform, Micron Global. Well, thank you very much, Vladislav. I'm very happy that we have people who are ready to take action, to act. Tamara is asking, who will keep selling those 78 billion shares? We are going to do it through the marketing platform that will be providing those marketing services to GTI. It's our platform. We will be spreading the word through internet and offline meetings as well. So this is what we're going to do, Tamara. We will be selling those 78 billion investment shares. That's why I'm saying there is a lot of uncharted territory and ground to cover. And here we can move gradually to the third item that I announced today, which is remuneration payment plans. Point 7. Let's jump to point 7. It's the third item that we're going to discuss today. The remuneration payment plans. Let me read it out. It's quite a short paragraph or point. I already covered some of it. The GTI holding is developing a long-term financial strategy aimed at creating conditions to start paying remuneration to investors. According to current plans, the initial opportunity to make such payments may arise no earlier than the fourth quarter of 2026, provided that the holding companies achieve the necessary financial performance. This timeline is a benchmark reflecting positive expectations regarding profit growth dynamics, but the actual start of payments will be determined by the level of profitability and stability of the operating activities of the subsidiary companies. That's what I was telling you about operations or operating activities of the subsidiaries, profitability and stability of the operating activities. Those are still the risks that the string transportation technology faces, which is to ensure stability and profitability of the subsidiaries, of the companies that are part of the GTI group, to make sure it's stable and not shaky. Remember, I told you 5 minutes ago that let's imagine a worst case scenario where there will be lack of funding in one of the months. Then a critical situation might happen where the company might lose one of its assets, one of its companies in its group, because staff works for money, for salary. And for us, it is important to generate revenues to be able to fund the staff's work. And we do it through crowd investing. And if we do that, the company will be able to generate net profits and won't have to spend its revenues on its operations. Instead, it can use its revenues to generate net profit to be shared with its investors. Next, until the relevant financial conditions arise, it is assumed that the generated profit will be allocated for accumulation. This will ensure a sufficient amount of internal reserves, strengthen liquidity, and increase the transparency of subsequent settlements with investors. This approach forms the foundation for the holding's financial stability and contributes to the achievement of a key strategic result, the transition to a full-fledged profit distribution model. If sufficient funds are accumulated, they will be distributed in two main areas: payment of remuneration to current project participants, and second, formation of a resource for the repurchase of shares from investors who would like to sell their shares. The buyback, so-called. For example, if the company generates millions of dollars of revenues per month, or a 10 or $100 million, I'm just taking those numbers from the air. So how that money will be spent by the company? Of course, there will be people who will want to sell their shares back to the company, I'm sure. Of course, people are entitled to that decision. If they want their exit strategy, then according to the documents, they can do that. The company can buy those shares back if the company has accumulated funds for that, if they have enough money. And the second way that money can be spent is to pay its investors in the form of dividends or remuneration. As the project portfolio develops successfully, subsidiaries achieve sustainable operational self-sufficiency and stable profits exceeding expenses are generated, the holding company will be able to move to regular dividend payments. So, in other words, yes, if the company generates net financial performance, net profit, then holding company will be able to start paying regular dividends. This prospect creates additional financial planning opportunities for investors, enhances GTI investment attractiveness, and confirms the holding company's focus on generating long-term and sustainable returns. So if we summarize what I've told you today, in my opinion, those three items regarding 15 stages, regarding the share conversion plans, and item 3, remuneration payment plans, all of it are interrelated. One comes from another. And it is important that we, as investors into the holding company, understand this logic and understand that it is built for our own interests and the interest for faster capitalization and monetization of our investments and the UST technology itself, because this model implies receiving material gains even before IPO. However, the IPO, and it is mentioned in the memorandum, we will discuss it during our further meetings, but I would like to repeat it. Anyways, this might happen like at a snap of the fingers, because when the commercial projects start scaling up really fast, it might start way too fast, because this is what happens in life. But what we lack probably in order to ensure that fast scaling up is probably not enough positive factors locally in the countries. But if it happens, then it will happen really fast, really big. However, for example, the first dividends might be slow and small, but then all of a sudden, at year 3 or 4, it might skyrocket, and that's where we'll see a rapid jump from small dividends to regular big dividends. However, we need to make sure that the company sustains, that the company maintains its operations through that period. That is why crowd investing is so important, to help the company go through that transition period when the company is ready to scale up, to roll out their products into the market. And we, as agents, can spread the word. We can help increase the interest in the world in that technology. And we have very good conditions to do that, very good commissions to do that, and also very good discounts to do that. Remember that we still have a current rebranding promotion active, and we are almost at the end of that rebranding period. And there's an interview that Dmitry Slusar took from me 2 or 3 years ago, and we weren't able to do the rebranding 2 years ago. You understand why it happened, what kind of events prevented us from rebranding it. But the interview that was recorded back then is still very relevant today. It was published a couple of days ago on our YouTube channel in the news section. Please watch that interview. It explains in detail why we decided to go through rebranding, and today it is as actual as ever, topical as ever. So we should rewatch it, and that you will understand why it is so important to take advantage of the packages that we have right now within our very generous discounts, up to 144 discounts, considering that we're still in between a venture project and an investment project. And it's like of a last call offer, if you will, last chance offer, when you can still have a very good discount or access 1 to 144, because once the Micron global platform is launched, we're not going to go back to such discounts ever again. They will be reduced by at least 30%. So you still have a week to take advantage of such juicy discounts. And you don't necessarily have to do it yourselves, because I'm sure many of you already have quite sizable portfolios, probably numbering a couple of million of pre-IPO shares right now. And probably you've already achieved the desired target in terms of how many shares you would like to have in your portfolio. But others probably haven't yet, and now it is their opportunity. You all have people who have been probably observing you, who have probably been observing the technology, and I'm sure you have things to say to those people who are still observing, because right now, before the New Year's Eve, you have things to tell them what happened in the year 2025 alone, what kind of memorable milestones were achieved by the company, such as the recognition of the technology at the state level in the BRICS countries and in the Union state, the creation of the national standards, recognition of or assignment of the R&D status to the UST Incorporated. It happened a couple of years ago. Then the launch of the first commercial project, and then the second one. And the first commercial project has already been in operation for a year in Aquarel Eco Park. And then another project is being designed right now for the biggest population country, India. In other words, you have a whole list of arguments and pros why a person needs to become an investor into the string transportation technology. Moreover, friends, I wanted to help you in this regard. This Sunday, I think this is a better day than Saturday. This Sunday, we are going to have a summary meeting, end of the year meeting for year 2025 that will cover the achievements of the string transportation technology. We will go through all the major milestones, and I will give you the plan for 2026 as well regarding the development of our crowd investing mechanism and platform. And I'll also cover some of the events that we're going to have in 2026, starting January. We are going to have that meeting on Sunday at 3 p.m. European time, 4 p.m. Kiev time, and 5 p.m. Moscow time. And then you can apply your time zone for India, Vietnam, and so on. So what kind of assistance I'm going to give you for your potential investors, and you will hear it from my speech, by the way, on Sunday. You can invite them all to our meeting on Sunday at 5 p.m. Moscow time, where your potential investors or your potential prospects, your candidates, will be able to hear all the key milestones achieved in 2025 from me. They will also see what kind of prospects are in store for them for 2026 and other, and in the nearest future as well. So I sincerely extend my invitation to you to our meeting on Sunday, which is going to happen on the 27th, if I'm not mistaken. 20 what is the day? 28th. Yes, 28th of December. We will do the summary. We will build the plans for 2026, and I'm sure that meeting will help many people who are not yet investors into the string transportation technology make the decision to become an investor. And I'm sure that if you can't attend it live, you can watch it, the recording of it, and then share that information with the people you know. And those people, I'm sure, after watching and listening attentively, will make that decision to join the project and become investors in 2026. So, of course, this meeting is not yet, we have not yet, finished breaking down the document. We've just started analyzing that, reviewing that document. It was, let's call it part one of detailed breakdown. We just looked into 3 points, and probably we'll have 2 or 3 more meetings dedicated to that memorandum. Let me remind you that we will still keep collecting your feedback in our Telegram channel. In the pinned messages, you will see the questionnaire where you can ask your questions. We have several dozen questions already. Today, I just decided to touch upon the key, most asked question that is of concern to almost everyone. And I hope that you guys at least now have some clarity regarding those three items regarding when, what, and how in terms of payout, dividends, and so on. So give me please a plus in the chance, or give me a score from 1 to 10 on the clarity of answers that were given to those 3 points that we've discussed today. The point 5, 6, and 7 from the memorandum on the scale from 1 to 10, please. Well, I can see a lot of 10s. This is good news. Thank you very much, dear colleagues, for that. I see 20 even Satish gave. Wow. Out of from 1 to 10, 20. Good. Well, thank you very much. I did my best. I see lots of messages in the chat. We had more than 200 people today at this meeting, which is quite of good news that we have so many people attending our meeting live. So many partners of our. So in this case, colleagues, let me thank you for your participation in this meeting. It took us 1 hour, 20 minutes, which is good, which is very decent. We will cover the remaining part of the memorandum at later meetings. I would like to remind you again that you can still ask your questions in the questionnaire that is pinned in our chat, and we'll see each other next Sunday. Please attend. And not only come yourselves, but also invite people who are still on the fence, who are still observing, who haven't yet still made up their minds. And we will help them make up their mind. And I'm sure that end of the year meeting, summary meeting, is going to be quite inspiring and quite promising for the year 2026. Thank you very much for your attention and see you on Sunday. Bye bye.